20 years ago, many people would have been astounded at some of the technological advances we've made in society. From personal computers to cell phones, holographic images, and super-powered telescopes, the evolution of technology has been rapid and incredible, which leads me to my final question on my show. What will they think of next? You're watching Victoria's Questions. On the final episode of Victoria's Questions, we're going to take a look at the past, as well as glancing into the future, at some of the technological strides we've made in the last several decades. The first PC, or personal computer, was introduced in 1981 by IBM. Although other companies like Berkeley introduced similar models, as many as 30 years prior to the machine, those only featured adding machines and games like tic-tac-toe, and many of them were too expensive and not practical to the individual. The first computer using a microprocessor was invented in 1973 in France and was known as the Micro. Over the next several decades, computer enthusiasts watched as desktops became laptops, laptops became tablets, and everything got smaller and more portable, more lightweight, and more powerful. Along with the advancement of computers has been the increased popularity of the internet. The first networks of computers can be dated back as far as the late 1960s. Ethernet was invented in the mid-70s, and in 1990, Tim Berners-Lee introduced civilization to the World Wide Web. Now, more than 20 years later, the internet connects nearly every country in the world to one another and has spread from desktops to laptops with Wi-Fi connectivity and even to cell phones with 3 and 4G technology. I can remember some of the first computers that I had used at my parents' house. The printer was a track-fed printer with perforated paper, so you'd have to tear each sheet off individually. And the only game that they had on there was Wheel of Fortune. Really, really bad graphics. But before I knew it, I was on a Windows 95. I know, how advanced. Playing Jumpstart and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, CD-ROMs, and now I don't even know if USB drives existed at that point. Floppy disks have pretty much died out of existence. Probably my least favorite thing about internet in its early days was the dial-up. Waiting and waiting and waiting, and my parents probably didn't like it too much when I'd unplug our telephone and plug it in. That way the internet would go a little faster. Long gone are the days of thousands of miles of telephone wires being needed in order to communicate with someone across the country. Wireless technology and the extremely rapid advancement of cell phone technology has made communication with nearly everyone in the United States almost instantaneous. April 3rd, 2013 marked the 40th year anniversary of the first cell phone call made by Motorola engineer Marty Cooper from a giant clunky machine. Now, cell phones are small enough to fit in the palm of one's hand. They're getting smaller, sleeker, and more powerful every day. Not only is it just voice-to-voice anymore, like phones were in the beginning, now there's FaceTime, and you can talk to people face-to-face using an iPhone or a new Droid. Flip phones have definitely died out, although I still keep one. But I can remember back in the 90s and early 2000s thinking how cool kids were walking through the mall with their flip phone. And you know, we can read text messages, get pictures, videos on our phones. 10 years ago, I remember it was just this little strip with digits. That was the cell phone. We've made lots of advances. The video game world has also made a tremendous amount of improvement over the last couple decades. From content to graphics, console intelligence, virtual reality, and live motion controls. Computer Space was the first video arcade game released in 1973. And since, gamers have moved away from arcades and onto couches as consoles continue to get more advanced. The graphics nowadays are unreal, or perhaps a little too real. And consoles can do things like surf the web, connect you to Netflix, store and play music, videos, pictures, and a lot more. Film cameras became obsolete when the digital camera was introduced by Kodak in 1975. Invented by Steve Sasson, it took 23 seconds to capture a photo and was initially rejected by a confused audience that did not understand the concept of storing digital images. Now, cameras are small enough to be attached to the backs of insects or inserted in humans for surgery, portable enough to be included in nearly every cell phone and tablet, and powerful enough to allow us to capture images outside of our universe. After the break, We'll be joined by Victorious Questions alum Matt Robertson and communications professor Brett Erickson to discuss these topics and more. You're watching Victorious Questions. Welcome back to Victorious Questions. Joining us today on the show is an alum, Matt Robertson. He's been on the show before. And we also have joining with us an HC professor, Brett Erickson, from the communications department. So today, what we're doing on the final show is we're kind of taking a look back at all the technology in the past, looking at where it's come and how far it's come, and maybe making some guesses about where it's going to go in the future. So we're going to start with you, Brett, since you've been around a little bit longer than the rest of us. Hey. So do you remember the emergence of, like, I don't know, what came first? Computer, cell phone?
Oh, that helps. I was going to say writing.
Ah, yes, well, and then the typewriter, right?
Yeah, a while after that. Cell phones and computers.
About the same time?
I think the big change that I saw was the Mac. And before that, computers were pretty hard to use. If you wanted to use a program, you had to enter in, you had to type in run Word or run whatever, and then Macs really changed that around. Suddenly, computers could be used by everybody, and so probably growing up with that was why I like looking at those things. How are computers easier for people? And cell phones were kind of the same way.
Matt, when did you get your first phone?
I got mine a lot later than most of the kids that I knew. I feel like by middle school, most kids were starting to get cell phones. I didn't get my first one until my 16th birthday.
Right, which makes sense in my mind. I don't really know why you need a phone unless you have a car.
Cell phones didn't really... Well, when I was in high school, cell phones were really, really big.
Yeah, like...
it actually was a bag phone, because where I grew up in the boonies, there weren't cell phone towers close enough, and the cell phones had to be so powerful you carried them in a big bag about that big. And they had an antenna that popped up, and a lot of times you use coaxial cable that you mounted to an antenna on the top of your car, because that was the only way you were going to get a cell phone signal.
So much more convenient than going home and using the landline, right?
Yeah, a lot more convenient. Also a lot more cancer causing, because they had 6 or 7 times the power of the cell phones that we have today. So you could hold it to your head and it was an instant tumor.
Well, glad that that's changed.
So I stopped doing that when I went to high school.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so computers, totally crazy. Like, I mean, the iPad is essentially a computer in your lap.
It is a computer.
But there's no USB port. That really bugs me about that. I would be totally sold on the device if it had a USB port. And I know Google Cloud and blah, blah, blah. I mean, stuff like that is just becoming obsolete. CDs, flash drives, floppy disks don't get used anymore, I guess. And would you say it's because Google Cloud has become so big?
I don't think it's just Google Cloud. I don't think you can attribute it to one place. I think it's overall cloud computing. And if you really want to know the truth, it has less to do with cloud computing and more how much bandwidth you have.
Okay.
If we were still on dial-up, cloud computing wouldn't happen.
No.
So it's a matter of memory has become cheap. So that flash drive that you say is antiquated, all it's done is been stuck in a computer somewhere on a server instead of you carrying around one in your pocket. And anybody notice how slow the internet has been on campus lately?
Yes.
Okay. A lot of that has to do with more and more people using the internet for larger and larger files, more demands.
So
the pipe gets, you can have as big a pipe as you want, but the more information that you cram through that thing, the slower stuff goes.
And a lot of that space that we take up, I mean, is that our email? And because I mean, I use my email.
Tiny.
Okay, good. I don't feel guilty because that's where I keep all of my attachments.
It's you watching Netflix in HD on campus, along with 800 other people, and then students at the same time using Adobe Creative Cloud, so they're downloading applications all the time. It's more and more and more and more. And as things become decentralized from a machine to being something we pull down from the internet all the time, that pipe's going to have to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
So what do you think about, I'm trying to think, maybe it's Mayor Bloomberg that's making a certain part of New York free Wi-Fi for anybody, complete 100% public access. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that part of the reason why, our internet has been getting, I guess, bogged down by more and more uses, that we've just been making more things virtual. I think that there's more space needed because we create more virtual things rather than real things. I think that free internet for area of New York would be pretty good because, it's just like coffee shops and things like that. Like, everyone likes to go and have free internet somewhere.
Personally, I think internet should not be a commodity. I think it should be a public good. Everybody's got access.
Like a drink from fountain.
Yeah,
bathroom.
pretty much. I just don't think that it's fair to. I just don't want to pay for internet, to be 100% honest.
Honestly, there's a whole set of theories that evolve around this, something called the digital divide and knowledge gap.
Yes, definitely.
And what happens in terms of how people are economically disadvantaged by not having access to the internet. So the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, whether it be in terms of money or whether it be in terms of knowledge. And now, if that's Bloomberg's intent, I'm really impressed. My guess is it's partially. It's the Colosseum to the Romans, if you want to know the truth. Mayor Bloomberg gave all of us free internet. Emperor Vespasian gave us feeding Christians to lions.
Right.
It's a little bit of the same. It's a little bit of the same thing in my mind. Now, again, it's also a major problem in terms of economics and other elements, and it's probably going to be a pretty significant infrastructure problem at some point or form.
So as a communications professor and as someone functioning in everyday society, one of the issues is with the advances in technology and, doing things online virtually, we're losing our basic human communication, our abilities to sit down and talk with someone and look them in the eye,
Emotions.
Yes. So, which is why I keep my flip phone. Because I am totally anti-new age, I just don't want to have to fall into that, where you're sitting at a restaurant and you're sitting across from someone and you see them both on their phones, with more of these advances, at what point do you think we're going to go too far?
I think that to an extent we already have. I get to class in the morning and I'm in a room filled with people, filled with students, all of kind of a similar age and background, and none of them are communicating with each other, and they're all sitting on their phones communicating with either someone else. I feel like the realest communication is face-to-face, but...
And it's coming to college, it's hard. You got to make new friends and everything, but I'm sure it was a much different experience for you because you didn't have something in your hand constantly distracting you from the people around you, You had to interact.
Sometimes we did have other things in our hands, but they were usually called beers.
In class.
But not in class, no. But that was, and that's a really interesting dynamic in terms of even how students think about the ways that they want to interact with each other. And I've talked to students about this, and I've looked at some of the research as well, and a lot of it seems to be a general level of what we call time shifting. That's not what happens in face-to-face communication. Plus, texting is a lot easier from the fact that you're only dealing with one form of communication. You're dealing with basic verbal communication. You've taken nonverbal elements out of it.
Oh, not just that, but I mean inflections in the voice. Sarcasm is really hard to use over texting.
That's nonverbal. That's really nonverbal, and so it's a question of how has social networking and texting really impacted a generation in terms of how good they are at reading nonverbal cues.
Do you think that technologies kind of acted as a shield for us? You know, like you don't have to go up to somebody and talk to them. You can just add them on Facebook.
It can become a lot less impersonal. Like, you know, interactions with people. Texting makes it a lot less impersonal. I think that because you don't have to answer them on the spot, like someone could...
Or at all.
Right. Someone could pose like a question that maybe you weren't sure about, and instead of having to respond, you take your time with it, like figure it out, like maybe like...
Text one thing and then it's like, no, I don't want that. Yeah, eat a Snickers, take a break, think about it. So looking at the past, and I mean it was a slow start, but now it's the speed and advancements are coming quicker and increasing, and the devices are becoming smaller and so much more technologically advanced. I mean, where do you see it going, and where do you want it to stop, I guess?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of whether we want it to or not. I think it's
Do you think it will?
Well, there's folly in prediction. If you had asked Thomas Jefferson, you know, how far will this go? I mean, Thomas Jefferson was ecstatic that he designed a system where he could write with one pen and it copied with another one over on this side, so that he could write two letters at one time. You know, let alone carbon paper, you know, which allowed you to write a copy without two pens, and then photocopying, and you know, and so if you'd asked any one of those folks, the guys who even designed the internet in the 1960s,
probably did not picture this.
Well, you know, the funny thing about the first message, the first real email sent on the internet in the 1960s, I believe, was the letter X, and it crashed the system.
Huh.
It was too much data. And now we're angry when, you know, son of a gun, I'm trying to send.
I'm trying to Facebook and watch Netflix, and I'm trying to type a paper, and I'm trying to do research.
I can't handle it.
Oh, how irritating.
And so, you know, and again, it goes back to Moore's Law, where the speed at which technological advancements tend to happen gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter.
I guess my advice isn't so much that technology is a bad thing. It's just like guns, you know. They're not bad. It's just the way that you use them. I feel that
guns don't kill people. I kill people.
Right.
Talk about technology. You can print a gun now with a 3D printer. There's a program you can just, if you have a 3D printer, which are also becoming more affordable, you can make a plastic gun and a functional plastic gun. That's
actually been around for quite a while. The 3D printing just was really expensive for the last 15 years.
Okay, I had no idea that this was around until just like 30 seconds ago, so wow. What advancements interest you or have surprised you the most?
I've been hearing a lot lately about cyber warfare and how that's been probably going to increase a lot lately, and it's been going on a lot lately, and that's just, you know, computer programs, like, and that's between, you know, governments, really. It's the warfare is just becoming cyber now.
Just like everything else, it's virtual.
It's everywhere now.
I suppose the only pro about that is that people don't die, right?
Maybe not directly.
Yeah. What about you, Brett?
I think mobility is probably that's what I deal with the most anyway. Just the nature of, if you look at the 1980s, with brick phones and bag phones, and how happy we were to stick in an analog world where being able to have a voice was enough. And now we expect that we should be able to text, get the weather, play Angry Birds, and
Snapchat,
watch video, do umpteen things with Instagram, all within the same 30 seconds. And so what's happened is we've become both an information hungry and what we'd call a snacking culture, information snacking culture. And so it's no longer about sitting down and reading a book. It's about, gosh, I'll read the title and maybe the synopsis of the book, and that's probably enough.
And the tags of it too, yeah.
And you know, if I can get Spark Notes on it, that'll be fine, and I'll just read the overview. What, Spark Notes a lot there, Hannah?
Not anymore. High school was great though.
So in any case, no, I think it's really changed how human society functions at a very fundamental level, and if you had talked to the inventor of the cell phone in 1980, I think it was 84, maybe 85, had he seen anything like that down in the future, I'd like to be a fly on the wall to hear what he would have thought, because I don't think anybody predicted what this was going to be like. I mean, heck, in 1984, Steve Jobs was just predicting that people wanted an easier computer, and he may be one of the greatest technological visionaries of our time. But I don't think even he, until the late 90s, would have said, yeah, hey,
this
cell
is
phones, tablets, all these other things. Think about how that can work socially. And I shouldn't say that, because in 1998 he did say that, but I would say early 1990s it wasn't there yet. So who knows where so it is fun to watch what's happening with it. And for some folks it's a little disturbing if they want to be Luddite about it. Can they do anything about it? Well, they can go hide in a cave, but you really can't avoid it.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show today. I mean, we could probably talk about this for hours, days. I probably will.
Anyway. You'd have to go to class.
So I want to say thank you, Matt, and thanks, Brett, for being on the show, talking about technology and the advancements. It's been crazy, and it's going to get crazier, I'm sure. But I just want to thank all of the viewers for watching this. It's been an interesting road, and the 5 shows have been great. We're going to keep the Twitter feed open over the summer, so ask us questions. Give us your opinion on the show and the shows that we've done in the past. Maybe you've got ideas for episodes that we can do in the future. But above all, continue to ask yourself, what will they think of next? You've been watching Victorious Questions. So when you think of the hard workers in the United States, policemen, firefighters, teachers, in comparison to professional athletes, do you think there's fairness in the difference in pay scale up there?
No, not really.
Would you say that athletes now in today's society are highly overpaid?
Yes.
No, you don't think so?
Yes.
You don't think so?
Nah,
Why?
because they working for what they getting, really.
Yeah.
So, no, they not getting overpaid.
I think they
Like, if you was an athlete, you'd be like, I'm getting overpaid.
Well, it's funny how people supporting our country are getting paid less than professional athletes. So I think they're extremely overpaid.
Do you ever feel like on MSN you have to weed through a lot of like kind of garbage articles to get to like actual news?
Sometimes, because there's a lot of like mainstream stuff, like the drama, they put that up there, so you have to kind of, if you're looking for something in particular.
I think it's biased sometimes.
You ever seen this?
Yeah.
Toward bias.
Just like the opinions, it's not very informative. It's more opinions of the writers.
So thinking about sequels and series of movies, Which would you say has been the best sequel or series of movies that you've seen come out?
Toy Story is the best. The third one I cried so hard because we grew up with Andy, and so it was like watching ourselves grow up. That's probably my favorite. It's probably Toy Story.
I absolutely hate texting. If I can avoid it, I do. I just dislike it. My dad gets irritated when I text him. I feel like it's a cheap way to say something that you're scared to say. Definitely. I mean, pardon my expression, but grow a pair and just ask the question, right? So where do you think?
You just see that on TV?
It's on the web, so don't worry about
Still
it.
TV.
Yeah, I know, but we can edit it.